Hello, everyone. Welcome to the APAD Talk series at the Photography Show presented by APAD. My name is Lydia Malamed Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of APAD, and I'm thrilled to be introducing this conversation, part of our collaboration media partnership with the World of Interiors. We're thrilled to welcome them as a partner this year. I'll begin on that note with introducing Ivan Shaw, who's currently the Corporate Photography Director overseeing the U.S. Condé Nast Archive, as well as serving as the Acting Visual Editors for the World of Interiors. Previously, he served as the Photography Director of Vogue, a position he held for 20 years. He currently sits on the Board of Directors of the Detroit Institute of Art's Friends of Prints, Drawings, and Photographs, and is the author of numerous books, including but not limited to Around That Time, Horsted Home in Vogue, and Patty Hansen, A Portrait. Today, he's in conversation with a fabulous New York-based photographer, Ngoc, and it's the author of Bringing Nature Home, In Bloom and Eden Revisited, and New York Green. Her images have been published in international publications such as The World of Interiors, Architectural Digest, and T Magazine. She's also exhibited her work at the Musée Yves Saint Laurent in Marrakesh and Wave Hill Garden in New York. She is the recipient in 2023 of the Larry Letterman Landscape Photography Award, Fellowship at the New York Botanical Gardens. And I'm thrilled and excited for this to be happening here in our glorious return to the Park Avenue Armory, for somebody who creates such beautiful images to have this conversation with the World of Interiors and one of the iconic interiors of New York City. So on that note, I'll hand it off to you two, and please enjoy this fabulous conversation.
Thanks so much, Lydia. Hi, everyone. We're really excited to be here with all of you today. I'm Ivan Shaw, Ngoc Minh Ngo, and we're going to talk a little bit. By the way, just so I don't forget, if you're interested, I just did a piece on theworldofinteriors.com on Ngoc and her career. It's my Taking Pictures column. So if after you're interested in learning more about Ngoc and her work, please go on to worldofinteriors.com. I'm kind of promoting my column before we even get started. But again, we're thrilled to be here with you today. Ngoc and I have been working together for a couple of years, and so it's been a super exciting opportunity for me to talk with you a little bit and talk about your work and your career. So we're going to jump into it. So Ngoc, you're originally from Vietnam.
Yes.
And tell us about these images.
I'm from Vietnam, and my family left Vietnam in a hurry in 1975 when the war ended, and so we left everything behind. And my father had taken a lot of photographs of us growing up. Photography was a big part of our life. He took photos and Super 8 films, and so we had lots and lots. We have a very big family to begin with, so we had packed up everything in boxes, and the idea was everything would be sent on afterwards. But when the communists came, our housekeeper decided that he would burn all these boxes that contain all of our photos and any traces of us.
Yeah.
So over the years, I've been able to collect a small collection of photographs of my family from various sources, from my family, my relatives around the world. And so these two images are the earliest images that I have of my mom on the left, and my dad and my mom together on the right. And they are pictures that I look at a lot. I have looked at very, very carefully, and they kind of taught me how to look for things in photographs. Like I think I read a Baudelaire quote that said that in a portrait, nothing is incidental. So every detail, like the portrait of my mother, is tiny. It's about this small. So yeah, there are like the first lessons in looking at photographs for me.
Yeah, so you start off your sort of relationship to photography. It starts with this loss, in a sense, right?
Right.
And sort of what I think is fascinating is the fragility of photography, but also the value of it, right? And this is your memories. But let's jump in a little bit later. I love this photograph. This is you. And to preface it by saying, this photograph ends up on the cover of Travel and Leisure, correct?
Yes.
So this is you taking pictures,
Yes.
ends up on the cover of a magazine. Tell us a little bit about this picture, and we can talk a little bit how you get into photography.
Oh, so the picture, there I am with my very first camera, which is a Canon AE series. And that's the camera that I have because when I became interested in photography, a friend of mine gave me very good advice. In fact, I got really good advices from a lot of people. He said to buy a manual camera. That way you learn the mechanics of photography. And then he also recommended a book called Basic Black and White Photography by Harry Hornstein. And that's everything that I needed to learn photography.
Wow. So I know you've told me the story that you were going to study conservation, painting conservation.
Yes.
That didn't work out. It was a little too complicated, expensive. Yeah. And then you end up working with Barbara Rose, the famous art critic, on a book, correct?
Well, on a art journal. It was an English edition of an art journal that was published in Italy,
right.
In Giornale dell'Arte. And so, yeah, she wanted to publish this in English, and she brought it to America, and I worked with her on that.
Yeah, and then you end up working on a film set, right? And
yes.
that's really when the photography kind of kicks in, correct?
Yes. So I worked on this film, and the cinematographer was Tom DiCillo, who shot Stranger Than Paradise. And we looked at a lot of black and white photography, cortege, just absolutely beautiful black and white photography, and I was stunned. I was just like, this is really great. I want to learn more about this. Right. And on the set, the still photographer taught me how to print black and white, and I started from there.
You started there. You started printing black and white, I think in your apartment, if you told
In
me.
my apartment, I had one of those tiny apartments in Soho that had a bathtub in the kitchen, and there was a lid put onto the bathtub, and that became like the counter. And so my dark room was set up on this counter above the bathtub, or atop the bathtub. And then I kind of outgrew that, and then I started going to this dark room rental, where you could rent a dark room by the hour. And that was a really great learning experience, because then when you hang up your pictures, your prints to dry afterwards, you go through the washing outside, and people feed it through a drying machine, and you get to see all these people's work. Yeah. And that kind of like opened up a lot of things for me. And then, but then I wasn't really getting anywhere with my photography. I was like, I loved it, but I felt like I wasn't really doing it in the way that I felt like could be anything, more than a hobby. But then I asked one of the guys who worked there to teach me color printing. So one night after he closed up, I paid him $20, and he showed me how to print color. Yeah. And once I started doing color, I just thought, okay, I think I can go somewhere with this. Right. And that's when I
found your palette.
Yeah, I found my thing, because I was always interested in painting before, so colors were always something that I paid a lot of attention to, and sort of felt attuned to them. Right.
So the moral of the story is $20 can change your life, right?
Yes, it did. It changed my life.
Yeah. So let's go on a little bit. I love this picture.
Oh, so I'm very interested in architecture and homes in general. The whole idea of design and home and architecture. And this was a series of stories that I did for El Deco UK. They sent me out to do a series of iconic houses.
Right.
And so this was the John Lautner house in LA. It's the Goldstein house.
It's the Goldstein house, right?
Yeah, it's a Goldstein house. It's a party house.
Although you don't seem to be having a party.
It is a party house because that pool, it's translucent underneath. So
Wow.
it's a floor underneath, so people will be swimming and you can see them.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
don't think I knew that. I've seen so many pictures of that house, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's
That's amazing.
beautiful, beautiful place with
Look at over
incredible
LA.
view of LA.
And so you begin photographing homes and doing architecture. And let's see. And of course, we get to the world of interiors very quickly. I can't help myself, sorry.
Yeah.
But is there something that really, so you start working for the world of interiors and you're working for AD. What draws you to architecture and interior design? What is it about it? Because you liked painting before,
Yeah.
but is it because it's kind of painterly in a way?
Yeah, it is. It's painterly. It's all design. It's visual.
Yeah.
But also, I love interiors as kind of a portrait of people. Like everyone's home is very particular,
Right.
and it's a reflection of who they are. And so that aspect of it was always interesting to me. I worked a lot at the beginning with our decoration with Ilsa Crawford, and
Wow.
and her. I really loved the way she looked at interiors because it's all about the person.
Right. So it's a
You know.
portrait in a sense.
Yes,
kind of
it's a portrait in a sense of the person.
Yeah, and you've now AD as well. You've done it. Before that was your first cover of World of Interiors. Here's some of your covers of Architectural Digest.
Yeah.
And beautiful. And when you go into a home, I mean, what happens? So you get an assignment from one of the magazines, and is there sort of an approach that you have when you kind of get there? What's the first thing that goes through your mind?
It's just everything, just sort of taking it all in and
Right.
finding what I respond to. It's all very intuitive. It just, whatever I respond to. Figuring out one of the first things also just I have to keep in mind always is where the light is at the different time of day, so that determines where I start. So how the light moves through the space. But basically, yes, just looking at things and seeing things and trying to figure out, well, not even trying, but like just sort of just seizing whatever I respond to.
Yeah. And I love these. These are really
And
beautiful.
these were done for Cabana magazine, and is Christopher Gibbs' house in Tangier, and he was an amazing person. He was sort of an antique dealer, but he, I think, was the set designer on the Rolling Stones film Performance.
Really?
He had
Wow,
an amazing
right, that sounds
history.
great.
And
An interesting guy.
He had great taste.
Yeah.
And it's just like again, it's like a portrait of his life and things that he
Yeah.
collected and all the stories. Every object had a story.
And is it different? I mean, some houses are very decorated. They've been worked on. It's decorated, expensive. Others are very organic and really a reflection.
Right.
Do you have a preference? Do you like a little bit of both?
A little bit of both, but if I had to choose one, I would say the latter.
Okay.
Because I'm really interested in stories.
Right, right. And this is very different. This is very. Can you tell us about this house and why you were there?
This was a story for Vogue, and it's a beautiful property. It's an island, and so this family had this old house, and they could have just sort of knocked down the old house and we completely built something new, but they didn't do that. They kind of renovated the old house, and then they built this new one on the property, and this was this very kind of almost Quaker-like
Yeah.
quality to it that I really love. Yeah, and the inside it is really beautiful too.
Can it be difficult sometimes to find the story in something that's very minimalist? Or because you do hear, because when I look at these pictures, I can feel the history, but there's also this kind of sharpness and the sharp angles and this kind of reimagining of a traditional space.
Right, right. No, I think sometimes, you can have the most spare picture, but depending on the light and the angle and things, it could be really evocative.
Yeah. And I love, this is one of my favorite places. This is Cranbrook.
This is Cranbrook, which I did for Frederick recently, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, we should probably talk a little bit. So Cranbrook, if you ever find yourself in Detroit, it's a project that was developed by the architect, Saarinen and his father, and it's extraordinary. It's a school and their home, and it is absolutely stunning. I've been a couple of times. But
they lived there in this small house,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
It's not big, but so that's the one on the right is the dining room of the house that the Saarinens lived in. And then the left is the cafeteria.
Yeah, I think for the boys, I think there's 2 cafeterias. So this is a working school. It's called Cranbrook. There's kids attend this school, so you can imagine going to your school cafeteria, what my school cafeteria looked like. It was a 70s monster, a concrete monster. And these students actually have lunch and breakfast, I think, too, in there every day in this sort of architectural and design masterpiece. It is breathtaking.
Everything was very, very beautiful, and that's part of it too. It's just like the whole idea is like you have to have this beautiful environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's completely, and I love this. This is much more intimate. Tell me again who this is.
Okay, so this is the Luis Barragan house in Mexico City.
Wow.
And it's very different, but it's.
This is where he lived, Louis Barragan.
This is where he lived. Very intimate spaces.
Yeah.
Very intimate rooms, and
Incredible. And it seems there's almost something religious about the way.
that
the
that
light
window,
is coming through
the
that
light
window.
is coming through there. I mean, he was quite religious.
Was he? Oh, well, there we go. There we go. I picked up on it.
Yeah.
And Calder.
And Calder. So the other thing that I love about my work is I get to have amazing encounters with with art and design, and so this was the Calder Foundation. I love Calders, and this is like the Calder Central with like so many different pieces of Calders everywhere, and it's just so playful, and I love being in that space.
Yeah. Do you like photographing artists' homes? I would imagine so.
Yes, definitely.
So we're going a very different track than Calder, equally as stunning. This was for World of Interiors, and it's the home of Dita Blair in Manhattan, not far from here, probably.
Right.
In the Upper East Side, Dita Blair is a famous social fixture and philanthropist, she just had done a book. This was the story for World of Interiors. Right. She had just published a book, which name I will tell you in a minute. And you photographed it. With a magazine. It was, Dita Blair, Food, Flowers, and Fantasy.
Yeah, I photographed the book also.
Oh, you did the book as well? Okay, I don't think I realized that, so not surprising. So it's all about food, and this is just, tell us a little bit about Dita and the experience.
Okay, so Dita is an incredible woman. She's 91 or 92 now, I forget. But she's had a very storied life. Her husband was the ambassador to Denmark and the Philippines for Kennedy.
Yeah.
And they lived in Washington for a long time. She was one of those Washington hostesses.
Yeah.
And then they moved to New York, and this is the place that they that she still lives in, but they moved into this space, in this apartment. And she is not just a socialite, she is very involved with the National Institute of Health, which is her life cause. She's devoted all of her efforts into supporting scientists, coming up with cures, and she has a particular interest in mental health. And so she did this book. It's a bit of a memoir of her life, but not in the traditional sense. So there are inspiration from the places that she'd been. She was good friends with Givenchy, places that she'd seen around the world, and then her recipes, because she was a big hostess, she was a big cook. So all the proceeds of the book will go to the National Institute of Health.
Nice. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Just to say, there's an 18th century chairs and a tablecloth made of sprigged silk, which is quite incredible. And what's amazing is, and so interestingly, Dita Blair, we actually, at Vogue, photographed her Washington, a Horst P. Horst photographed her Washington home in the 60s. So there's this history of her being photographed for Condé Nast magazines.
Right.
So there was a famous shoot of her and her son in the house by Horst, which was really beautiful, which was in a book that I did years ago. And now we photograph for World of Interiors, and what's, I think, stunning about the floral arrangement's incredible, but also there's both this sort of opulence of like an 18th century chairs, but also this sort of minimalism behind it too, right?
Yes.
This sort of stark room, yet it's also quite decorated.
Right.
It's kind of amazing.
It's incredibly elegant,
right,
like she is.
Right.
This is very, I mean, that space is very reflective of who she is.
Yeah, and your friends, you go there for dinner or
Yes,
something?
yes, I do go for dinner with her often. And the house, the apartment looks over the Roosevelt Island.
Right.
So it's beautiful at night.
Amazing. All right, hold on, let's see. Oh, we got clicker issues, I think. Oh, there we go. Sorry, that's my fault, probably. So tell us about, these are two of your books. I want to talk about Umberto Posti, a little bit, your relationship, but tell us about these two books.
So I spent quite a bit of time, this became a big part of my life in Morocco, working with this Italian writer named Umberto Posti. And he has this amazing place. He lives in Tangier, and then he has in an amazing house. And then outside of Tangier, in a very rural village that is overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, he has this incredible garden where he has this mission to save these wildflowers of northern Morocco.
Wow, cool.
And so we spent like 3-4 years working on this book, and it came out in 2019.
I have it here somewhere.
Yes, October 2019. And then I had an exhibition at the Musée Yves Saint Laurent in Marrakesh that year.
Oh, amazing. Let's go, because we want to talk a little bit more. There, oops, hold on.
So
is
so these are some of the photos from the book,
Right.
And so that sort of gives you an idea of the place.
Yeah. And Umberto, so when I wrote the piece, I got a quote from Umberto. So he tells a story that there was a particular fig tree. I don't know if these are fig trees. I don't know if they're
These are fig trees, but these are
okay.
not it.
But there's one fig tree that he says that you just sort of spent hours and hours observing, and one day you told him that it was, the pictures you were taking of the tree was an auto portrait, correct?
Yes.
It was really beautiful. And then, so he and his partner now refer to that tree as Ngoc. It's now you are the tree. But
Yes.
what did you mean by that? I mean, you're spending time in this one tree. What was it about it?
Well, okay, so I had so the first time, well, I went to this place for the first time in May, and I was doing another book, and Umberto just invited me to have lunch here. And we sat down under this fig tree, and it sits by itself on the hill, and it looks over the ocean. And so we had this really nice chat. Actually, I should have included a
Next
picture.
time.
Someone took a picture of us under the tree on that afternoon, and we had a really nice chat. And then I came back in November to start this project. And we had this incredible day where Umberto drove us from Tangier to Rahuna, which is the name of the place. And along the way, he spotted this field of narcissus. And we rushed out of the car. It was the most incredible sight. It's like this field just covered in white narcissus. And we got down on our stomach to look at these. And we were just laughing and having this incredible experience. And then we came here, and the tree was completely different from when I had seen it. It was bare, and it looked amazing against the landscape. And I took a photograph of it, and I remember thinking that it was like an incredible day. There were four of us. There was Umberto, there was Stefan, who was Umberto's partner, and there was Bernard, who's this botanist, Belgian, and there's me. So it was like the United Nations. And we had this incredible day. And then the next day, the other thing about Rahuna is it's completely isolated. You don't, you're cut off from the world, kind of. There's no internet at the time. No cell service or anything. So the next day, someone came from the village and told us, have you heard the news? There was this terrible terrorist attack in Paris.
Right.
And so we were stunned. And so when I thought about that, I thought, that day while we were having this incredible experience, all of us who were Moroccans, French, Vietnamese, American, Italians, having this amazing experience and being in nature and all of that and seeing all this beauty. While that was going on in the world, this really terrible, awful thing happened. And so for me, it was like, yeah, that is the world, that is, and the only thing that makes sense is beauty, is so that tree for me became sort of very symbolic. And I just sort of related so much to that tree. I was very, kind of felt very connected in that way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oops, hold on. This is from the same area.
Yeah,
right?
so it's the same.
Beautiful.
It's the same place. It's a very kind of almost timeless landscape. Like you can't tell what period. That could be 50 years ago. Could be any time.
So much history. And this is the House of a Lifetime. So this is also with Umberto and.
Yes. So this
Madison
is
Cox.
this house in Tangier, which just has so much history in it, and all the objects and.
Amazing. And this is the house,
yes,
right?
this
It's
is
incredible.
the house. Every object has a lot of history. He has an incredible eye, and he's also very erudite and knows so much about Moroccan history and so he can look at an object and know its value and tell you stories about it. And that just,
This is also Morocco? Or?
yeah, so that's the view from the house, which is an incredible, so I love this image because I know that moment when I'm there, there's a call to prayer also going on.
Right.
And the light, and it's that time of day that is a very important time of day in the life of Tangier.
Right. It's beautiful.
And it is beautiful in many different ways.
Oops, there we go. Okay, so we're back to New York.
Yeah, so you're back to New York. So
Yeah.
I've lived in New York since 1988.
Right.
So it's sort of my adopted home. I used to think that I was stateless,
Right.
didn't have a country, but New York is my country.
Nice.
And so, so this is sort of my love letter to New York, and it's about all these green spaces in New York.
And where is this? I've never
So
been there.
this is Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Yes.
Gosh, okay. I never would have guessed it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. And I love this. It looks like a Bruegel to me.
Yes,
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Prospect Park on a snow day.
Yeah, because you generally don't shoot in the winter, right?
But you know, that's the wonderful thing about Prospect Park, and
Yeah.
when you get a big snow, everyone just like comes out with their skis, and the dogs love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, and I love this. So
And the cloister,
Yes.
it's one of my favorite places in New York City.
No.
Rockefeller. This was almost like
what was
an
this part of a
obsession.
project? This part of the New York project? Or
Yes,
New York
this is part of the New York Green.
Green.
I learned so much about New York history and all the different people who actually made the city what it is today.
Yeah. And was this woman just walking through?
Yeah,
Was
she
it
was
a
just
snapshot?
walking through. She was just like having a happy spring day in this beautiful space.
It's like you would have posed her there. She's perfect for that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of
yes,
extraordinary.
In this
Decisive
cloister.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, this
right.
sort of.
It's almost like a angelic
yeah.
figure.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. Oops. Oh, sorry, guys. Ooh, the clicker. There we go. Hold on.
So.
Wait, sorry. I'm failing here.
No.
Is there another clicker? I think the battery is running out on this one. All right, there we go.
Okay.
So we're on the world of interiors again.
Yes.
And there is something very special about this cover. But tell us, this is your most recent cover of January 2024.
Okay.
And let's
And
talk about it.
so this artist is incredible. She makes these flowers out of sugar and egg white, basically.
These are edible flowers. I know it's hard to imagine, but you can actually eat these flowers.
So the interesting thing about her as well, I mean, the work itself is stunning, it's unbelievable, but her story is, she's Dutch, of Indonesian ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
And so Suriname, or Indonesia was, then Suriname was a big, there's a big history of sugar from Suriname to the West Indies. And her ancestors basically were the people who grew the sugar and people who worked in the sugar factories in the West Indies.
Wow,
So
really?
now her work is with sugar, doing beautiful Dutch flowers.
Amazing.
So it's like a full circle.
Yeah, it's incredible history. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd want to display the flower or have it for dessert. I think I would be a real toss-up.
No, the details and again, it's the colors, it's the painting
amazing.
of the colors.
Yeah.
So she makes this paste and then she colors them, and then each petal is individually painted.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about, you do a lot of work with a lot of floral still lifes.
I do a lot of floral still lifes because I am interested in the stories that they tell. There's a lot of cultural history, there's a lot of art history, there's a lot of horticultural history, and a lot of world history, because plants move around with people. They follow people, and so I am interested in all of those aspects of them.
Nice. And this is
And so this
yeah,
is
it's very
part of a sort of a residency that I did at Wave Hill, and these are all flowers from Wave Hill Garden
right.
in spring.
And that's just right up here.
Yeah,
north of
in the Bronx,
right? In the
yeah.
Bronx, yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, let's see.
And so this is a series I did during the pandemic. At the very beginning of the pandemic, in April, we were all locked down. We couldn't do anything. But I live in Brooklyn, and where I live, there are so many beautiful gardens, and it was the most glorious spring. I felt like probably the most glorious spring that we ever had. And I spent a lot of time walking, looking at these gardens, and I remember reading the New York Times every day, and they would have this number every day of the number of dead people that day. And it was a very, very kind of heavy thing to see. At the same time, outside, it was the most beautiful, glorious things. And so I started gathering flowers, and I did these, thinking of them as basically memorials for these,
Wow.
these nameless, or actually they started publishing people's names, just sort of to give these numbers something.
Wow. So you're almost like having it's like a memorial or a funeral
Yeah,
for them, but
right.
through the flowers.
Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful.
thank you. And so this is a diptych that I did. So on January 7th, I had a job. Back then, we still weren't able to go to studio, so they sent me, it was for Elle Decor, and the story was floral arrangements done by these New York florists against these fabrics, the latest fabrics and things. So I had these arrangements delivered to my house, and I photographed them, and then afterwards I was left with some flowers. And that day, January 7th, my head was full of what had happened the day before.
This is after the Capitol riots.
Yes.
That's that January, January 6th.
Yeah, January
Capitol
6th.
riots.
So in reflecting on that day, the thing that I held on to the most was the story of Jamie Raskin's son, Tommy Raskin. I don't know if you know, but Jamie Raskin is a U.S. representative, and he had a son who committed suicide just before the new year. And Tommy Raskin was a brilliant student at Harvard. He was a law student. He was incredibly generous and compassionate and was so devoted to so many good causes. And unfortunately, he took his own life. And Jamie Raskin was very, very eloquent in speaking of this incredible tragedy. And on January 6th, he had his whole family there in the Capitol.
Wow.
And so for someone who had this terrible experience and then, having this, so the contrast for me between, what had happened and the kind of hope that someone like Tommy Raskin embodied was what I would try to express in these two compositions using the same flowers. So the dark one is sort of a memorial, and then the light one is the sort of the hope that could come
Right.
from,
The day after,
the day after,
the
yeah.
movement forward. Wow.
Right.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
Good. All right.
And
yeah.
so this is sort of like one of my recent projects that I was asked to collaborate with Echo Scarf, and it's their 100th anniversary. So they asked 100 creatives around to create something, and then we could choose a charity of our choice to donate the proceeds to. And so this is what I did. And the proceeds will go to the Bronx Green Up program.
Beautiful. Japan.
Japan.
This is a new phase for you, correct?
Yes, so Japan, I lived in Japan for 6 months when I was 21. And then I went back last year, and I started seeing things with new eyes. So I felt like Japan kind of taught me how to look again. And I started doing these in black and white. And I felt like, I mean, maybe it's not quite there, but I'm almost there on my black and white.
Yeah. They're beautiful. It's interesting that you're now almost in a weird way kind of full circle, right?
Right.
But you've found your vision.
Yeah.
And there is, even in this black and white, I think, a sense of color, right? And texture, and and beauty. It's interesting.
Right.
Did it feel good to work in black and white?
Yeah, it is. It's very tricky because I see in color,
Right.
So this is part of my fellowship that I did at NYBG. Again, it's a
botanical garden. New York
It's a botanical garden. And this is a native meadow at the botanical garden, and that rock is billions of years old.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and New York's an incredible place.
It is. And this gentleman.
This is also part of my fellowship. And so portrait is something that I've kind of done, but I'm not known for them. And so I did a series of portraits of these community gardeners.
Yeah.
And Talib, this gentleman, is incredible. He's 90-something odd years old.
Wow.
He was a sharecropper from Carolina.
Wow.
He has amazing stories to tell.
Sure.
Yes.
It's amazing. And roses.
And roses. So this is my my part of my book that I'm working on right now, that I'm in the process of finishing, and it will come out next year. From Rizzoli.
So I asked you, remember when I was interviewing, I said, what was your favorite flower? And you hedged a little bit, and then you said roses, and you told me a story about your dad related to roses. Can you share that story with us?
So my dad, he was a colonel in the Vietnam, South Vietnamese Army. And when we came to the States, he started gardening, and he grew roses, and then when he, in his last week, he basically was in a room. We had to move him downstairs because he couldn't move. He couldn't walk up the stairs anymore. So in this room, he looked out onto a bed of roses that he had planted. And every day I would look out and think, oh, they're budding, but they're not quite there yet. They haven't, I don't know when they're going to open. I hope they will open. They hope they will open before he passes. Well, they didn't. So he didn't see them bloom for the last time. So when I came back to New York, I was doing volunteer work at the Vogue and Botanic Garden. And so I started with the Rosarian. I started a series of roses. She would give me roses to bring home to photograph. I would spend whole days photographing them and thinking about them and thinking about my dad and having sort of a mental dialogue with my dad. Because roses, they embody so many stories. They can take you to so many places. There's so many different cultures that have sort of venerated the rose and incorporated them in their literature and their art and whatnot. So endless stories that I would be sort of mentally telling my dad and thinking about.
That's amazing. Thank you. Well, that was the last one. So and your Roses book comes out with Rizzoli.
Rizzoli next year, in the spring 2025.
So your dad's in that book in a sense.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Amazing. Questions? Anyone curious about anything? Thoughts? Going once? Questions? Sir?
Do you work mainly in film or with digital?
I started in film. When I began, digital didn't exist. So, yes, so I started in film, but now I work mostly in digital. The last thing I did in film, I photographed I had a Ground Flex camera, 4x5. I photographed my daughter once a year on the first day of school, and she finished school now. She's living in Hong Kong, working there, so I haven't taken out that Ground Flex since, unfortunately.
Nice.
Yeah,
Sir?
thank you.
Not that you have to give up any of your secrets, but when you do architectural or design covers, who's in charge? I know a movie set, someone's in charge that's going to decorate and design. Do you have the last say, or do you help do the pre-visualization and bring in other stuff, or is it there, or is this a matter on the place?
Well, it all depends on the publication. I mean, with World of Interiors, it's mostly me, because it's a very...
We keep it simple at the
Yeah,
moment.
very, very simple. Sometimes Hamish is there.
Yeah.
But most of the time, no. I just go on the location and I just shoot it. But with other magazines, there's sometimes a stylist and sometimes an art director.
Yeah, depends on the magazine,
Yeah.
client. Yeah. Next? Sir? Oh, sorry, the lady's got the mic. We'll get you next, promise. Go ahead, please.
Apologies if you already covered this and I missed it, but when you're photographing interiors and also the still lives of the flowers, do you use only natural light, or do you
Most
use
of the
artificial?
time, natural light. Sometimes, like the picture of hope, I like that, especially if I want a certain kind of light. Yes, then I have to light it.
Sir?
Hi. So at this point, do you relate to flowers as inanimate objects or as sentient beings that you can have a conversation with or a relationship with?
They're definitely not inanimate. They do move, and they move rather quickly. Yes, and like I said, they embody so much, a lot of symbolism in them. So when I look at them, there's a lot to look at, and there's a lot to think about.
Nice.
So much of your, first of all, thank you for being here. So much of your work deals with natural splendor and a sense of wonder. Can you talk a little bit about how you first got into interior photography?
Actually, I didn't deliberately set out to get into interior photography. When I was first interested in photography, I just photographed whatever, like anyone. I would go out with a camera and photograph everything. And I had some pretty good, I was very lucky to know some really incredible photographers, one of whom is Adam Foos, and I assisted Adam. I don't know if you know his work, but he works mostly without a camera, and he uses alternative methods and large format if he does use a camera, daguerreotypes and things. And he did. So I worked with him when he was doing these photograms of plants, of flowers, and they're amazing, and they were cibachromes, so I processed the cibachromes. And so I learned a lot from that, just sort of a way of seeing things that is not, so it's sort of a different way of looking at things. And then another friend is an amazing photographer. It's Paul Graham. And I remember, and Program and I, we used to write to each other. We had this incredible correspondence back in the day before emails. and I remember one time being very naive, you know, like super cliche, saying, oh, I love capturing the beauty of the world, whatever, or something like that. And he wrote me back, set me straight, said, it's not about capturing anything, it's about letting the genie out of the bottle. And that, I think, is something that taught me a lot. Just that one phrase. So learning to see the wonders that maybe is not so obvious, and maybe other people haven't seen, that only you can see. So you have to bring a lot of yourself into it. It's sort of you kind of mediate what you see. So the thing that you're photographing is mediated through you, and out of that comes this image, right? So, I mean, there was a book that, I forgot what it's called, I think maybe Double Take, and they compare, the whole book is about different photographers who have taken pictures of the same place or some objects, and you see how different it is. Like, you know, certain subjects that are just like Route 66, you know, and they have a Robert Frank picture, and then next to it someone else's picture, and then you see how each person brings something into it, and completely different.
Amazing. Any other questions? Thoughts? All right, I think that's it. Thank you all for joining us today. It was terrific. Thank you so much.